are Squawking Dead, a podcast pulverizing episodes of the Walking Dead universe. Sometimes we give you news, sometimes we make you laugh, but most times we go deep. Today we'll be discussing Tales of the Walking Dead's series finale, the 6th episode titled La Doña Rachel. Not really, La Doña. La Doña Alma. Before we continue, on top of attending the camp and Anthony Collins' That's My Viewing Party, the Walking Dead series finale viewing party that will end all viewing parties, on top of having a forum on the latter and an artist table on the former, we will also be giving away free stickers, as we have in the last few conventions, as well as I've procured some of those t-shirts, those very t-shirts, to sell at the camp and Anthony Collins' viewing party. I've gotten a sample of them, like 10 of each size, basically, from each design. If sales go well for the camp, I will end up buying more. But it's up to you guys to contact us to tell us if you'd like us to include other designs or other sizes, because for now I've only purchased large, extra large, and 2XL shirts. So if you are into mediums, let us know right away. DM us. If you're into a different design than what we're normally procuring, bang us hard to get to purchase that design. If enough people want it, at least 10 people want it.
Whoa.
Yeah, bang our DMs. You heard me.
Fun choice of words there.
Sorry, don't hesitate. Don't ask for consent. Just bang our DMs with your ask, and depending on the response, we'll get that many for each of the events plus a couple others. If you like it, odds are somebody else will like it too. So let us know.
So tell us what you want, what you really, really want.
Yeah. Do it like Spice Girls. Bang us like the Spice Girls. I don't know why I use that word, and now I can't stop using it.
I told you this was going to be a dirty episode right off the bat.
La Doña Rachel, everybody. La Doña. So after this episode airs, we will be opening up a Patreon. For those of you who are skittish about following our journey on Ko-fi, I still encourage following, but are following other creators on Patreon usually, and that's why people don't want to do two things. So if you are following other creators on Patreon, give us a look. The unfortunate business of having to be on Patreon is that, and I'm saying this up front, the basic rates for Patreon will be higher than Ko-fi because Patreon takes a much bigger cut. On top of the PayPal fees, on top of the Stripe fees, they take basically, I think it's 30% from whatever your generous support brings us. So that might mean instead of like a $3 coffee, it's going to have to be a $4 coffee, let's say. Them's the breaks. The memberships on Patreon might be, instead of as little as $1 a month, it'll be like $3 a month for the Walkers tier, $10 a month for the Whispers tier. And I don't think we're going to be putting the Survivors tier on Patreon, unfortunately, because Ko-fi has kind of a control. And if you like us that much to join us on screen, you're not going to hesitate from following and joining the Survivors tier membership on Ko-fi anyway. So at least if you're smart enough, because it'll be cheaper anyway. Because if we have to put it on Patreon, it's going to be like something like $30 or $33. So that's a month. So that's too much.
Are you like me in the morning? Half dead. Phineas Coffee will give you that boost to get you up and keep going.
That'll have meaning, right?
Dave and his wife enjoy the Champion and Majora blends with beans from South America. And if you're a real freak like Cosmo Mom 09 Rachel B,
No way!
you'll enjoy the Double XL High Calf blend with beans from Tanzania and India. Go to phineascoffee.com and use the promo code SquawkingDead to get 10% off your next purchase.
Pardon me, young man. Excuse the shit out of my goddamn French.
And now back to Squawking Dead.
In any case, thank you for hearing me out on these spots. And away we go, discussing this very strange, interesting, and scary, which I think most people liked about this episode.
Yes.
Similar to On the Inside, I think it was.
Yes.
The Walking Dead's season 11A episode with Connie in the Farrell's house. So, without further ado, I'd like to turn the mic over to Jasmine, who's only watched this episode, I think, once.
My kind of first impression is kind of similar to a lot of what I've said about Tales, is that I liked it, but in its own way that didn't really feel like Walking Dead's universe kind of way. It's a good thing in some ways and a bad thing in other ways. I appreciate the episode in some ways, but in other ways I'm like, I just want it to be a little bit more like Walking Dead. Like, I don't necessarily like the psychological elements for something Walking Dead related, but then if I sit back and like reflect on it in like in a more appreciative way, I do appreciate it. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm explaining this horrendously.
No, because you didn't have enough time to really let this episode sink in. So, I mean, maybe you would have had a different take on second watch, let's say. But overall, I mean, in terms of like versus dislike, on 100% scale, let's say 0 to 100, but where does it lie?
I'm thinking I like it more than I dislike it. 69%. We're going to go with that.
Like Rachel's current volume level. Speaking of...
That's my volume.
Oh, sorry, Bridget. My bad. I thought everybody had their volume to 69. All right, whatever.
Maybe.
Except for me, which is like 8.
Also, for the audience, I promise I'm going to be more organized in future. I usually like watch the episodes like 3 times and make notes and everything, but this has been a particularly exceptional week.
Because of your traveling, which if you watch the unedited version of this podcast, you might get a clue on what Jasmine's been up to.
Or
bonus.
if you follow my Instagram.
Or, yes, her reels are actually pretty trending. I mean, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So this Instagram queen has your number. Anyway, so Rachel, you, I think, had a similar reaction to this episode.
Yeah, I only got one watch in. So I started out really loving the episode. I was on the edge of my seat. I was biting my fingernails. I'm like, oh God, what's happening? What's going on? And then by the end of it, it ended, and I'm like, what the fuck just happened? That can't be like, where's the rest of it? We need to wrap this up somehow. I felt cheated.
Do you think this episode felt like most horror episodes end up, where like there's no satisfying ending, everybody dies, etc.? And that's not usually kind of the way The Walking Dead works.
No, I mean, horror in general usually wraps up nicely. There's usually a bad guy that needs to be stabbed through the heart or set on fire, or a heart that needs to be sacrificed, or something. Like, something usually happens at the end, and we all go, oh, that's how you release the spirit and be cured from the curse. And I'm with Sharondy. Sharondy's in our audience right now. Hey, Sharondy.
Oh, yeah? Oh, good.
Like Sharondy says, I was also kind of hoping, maybe hoping's not the right word. I almost expected it to be similar to The Old Ways, right? Like our dear friend Bridget, Kelly Canellis.
The movie The Old Ways on Netflix, probably still.
Check it out on Netflix. Probably still like top 5. Amazing.
Right. Rachel from Fear the Walking Dead is in there.
So when I saw the previews and they were talking about the Bruja, I mean, of course, my brain instantly went to The Old Ways. And I was like, oh, what a cute little nod to our Fear family. I had that in my brain. And I don't know if that hurt or helped while I was watching the episode. It may have been the wrong kind of seed to plant to watch the episode. So maybe I was expecting something and it didn't happen. And so then I was kind of disappointed. Maybe disappointed is not really the word. I just was like left feeling unsatisfied. I'm just like, where's the end?
Could that be because it's something that you said is like, I don't know if it was accidentally genius, but what you said was, oh, the good guys win, they figure out the thing. But then I argue, didn't the knife go into the bad guys in this episode?
Did they? I mean,
were they bad?
Were they dead?
But were they just grey like every other character in the Walking Dead universe?
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
And by the end of it, I'm like, okay, what actually happened here? Can I even trust anything that I just watched? Did anything I just see actually happen? Were they just dead the whole time? Yeah.
Short answer is no.
I almost expected them to just be dead the whole time, and this was taking place I don't know. It's just too...
Purgatory.
Yeah, right? Like, were we watching them in purgatory? Like, I don't know. The highlight of this episode for me was the bird.
The parrot.
The parrot. I loved the parrot.
Paco the parrot, or Brad, or Eladio, but we'll get into that in a bit.
Eladio.
It's a great double entendre, by the way. Bridget, lay it on us. Yes. The lover of horror.
I do love horror.
Didn't love this. No, I'm kidding.
No, this was fine for a cable television channel episode. Horror. Okay. It was fine. It can't be over the top like a movie. There's not enough time. And you can't go super, super, super gory because that's not going to be accepted by the network. So,
do you think it needed it, by the way? Do you think it needed a little bit more
I don't
gore?
think so. I don't, not for the vibe that this was going for. This was clearly more psychological horror than it was traditional horror. While I totally know what Rachel is talking about with the wrapping up, I really strongly disagree that good horror goes that route.
Me too.
A lot of the time.
Most of it.
This is just my personal opinion. So, like, I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody. But
Aiden just popped in, by the way. Yeah.
Hi, Aiden. But I will state that, when I think about classic horror movies like Halloween, the end of Halloween, Michael is dead and then gone. So the good guy, they win temporarily, but
Right.
the bad is still there. And
Right,
that's
true.
why horror is so good.
At least, right?
Right,
There
I
was
see
a
what you're saying.
defeat. Maybe not
Yeah.
death, but there was a defeat.
Like,
But
it was
I-
for something is kind of
Yeah,
what you're going
like-
for, right?
Yes.
That moment of, oh God, it's not wrapped up nicely. Oh, something else is going to happen. That's what makes horror interesting, right? Because you end the movie and you're walking away from it, but then you're left thinking about it and thinking what happens to the characters and what goes on next because Michael's still out there. And so that to me isn't bothersome. I don't mind when a horror movie ends and everybody dies and the bad guy's still alive. I don't mind that either.
Well, also because we're used to that, too.
It's nice for them to kind of just switch up the tropes and come up with new things. And so none of that really bothers me. I will say that this was super Macbethian, I guess would be a way to describe it. It's Macbeth told
Ish.
again.
I
There's
was going to say this as well.
so many elements of it are like Macbeth. That's classic psychological horror. So good on them. I thought it was interesting. Did it feel like a Walking Dead universe episode? Maybe.
Maybe is right.
Who defines the parameters of this?
Well, you do. You write this show, right?
Yeah, I mean, I write it, but clearly I didn't
So you
wr't
do.
this one. I didn't write this one at all.
It's like, don't
had
put
nothing
that
to
on
do
me.
with this
Don't put it on me. Well, which is telling because it's kind of like maybe on your first watch, Bridget, did you get that? Oh, what happened here?
Okay, let me clarify something for the ending in case this happened to anyone else. Because this happened to me. I was watching this in bed in the dark, which is like optimum scary time
Great
situation,
idea.
right? And I was so confused
Same.
because on Amazon Prime through AMC Plus, the little square in the corner comes up for the Talking Dead
Universe special.
TWD Universe preview special.
Right.
And guess what happened? The episode abruptly ends and it goes into Talking Dead. And I was like,
Yeah.
what the hell just happened?
Note to
I
self.
didn't even get to see the ending.
Always turn autoplay off.
I had to rewind this episode like 5 times to finally get out of that box fast enough to get the ending. So I will say, if anybody watched this and all of a sudden it abruptly ends and you're like, what was that? That wasn't the ending.
Where did it stop? If you
It stopped as they're being dragged down the hallway.
Oh, that's so
Oh, that
anticlimactic.
sucks. Yeah.
Just as anticlimactic
Yeah,
as the
no.
actual end. I'm kidding.
So,
Just kidding.
I noticed that. I noticed
took
that. and was
it
able
took
to
a long
stop it in
time for me to get to the actual ending. So
I can confirm that if you watch it on a dodgy website, this doesn't happen.
For those of you watching illegally, Jasmine's got your number also. So to dovetail off of the Macbeth allusion, Eliza actually wanted to come here herself to allay her thoughts, but instead she DM'd me her thoughts, and I want to give this a little bit more clarity and visibility. Oh, and Sharon D says, obviously out damn spot, clear reference to Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, and Sharon D also says, or also maybe like the Telltale Heart, which that is a much more apt and strong reference. So, which is Edgar Allan Poe. The Telltale Heart. So my thoughts on episode 6, Eliza says, wow, total descent into madness. I'm going to read this not like her. Total descent into madness. My first guttural thought when Idalia saw the blood on her neck was Macbeth. Out damn spot. Following the murders by Macbeth, Lady Macbeth begins a descent into madness with hallucinations, walking and talking to herself. I felt Idalia was following the same trajectory after Eric caused the death of Doña Rachel. This episode was one straight out of the horror genre. We haven't seen or felt this since the TWD episode On the Inside. The final scene where Dahlia and Eric ultimately kill each other and become absorbed by the vines and the wall in the basement made me think of how sometimes we become that which we fear the most, and how the guilt of our sins/crimes become the roots that hold us from escaping those things which we have done. And I have to say, by the end of my watch, I felt like that's what this was all about. The Walking Dead universe is filled with tons of things that we do, or I don't know, we keep picturing ourselves being there and trying to identify with people who do bad things in order to survive. And we accept that. We usually accept the bad things that our protagonists mostly do, because sometimes we sympathize with the villains, quote unquote, on the show as well. Sometimes they present reasons as to why they do things that may make us want to sympathize with them. But overall, we kind of explain away our protagonists. We explain it away because there are protagonists by name, labeled. We were like, okay, these people are us. These are our avatars. But what happens if it's too much? We don't get to see that often on the Walking Dead universe. We do in places, and we do see that with Michonne on her episode when she gets to have her little sliding door / Black Mirror / What If episode where she joins Negan by the end of the vision, I suppose. But that's just a taste. That's more of like, what if I did this differently? What if I didn't throw myself into people again? You know, what if I found the wrong people first, sort of thing? That's more of that. What if I decided not to save Andrea, essentially? This is one of those things where there must have been a lot of people out there that had to come to grips, just like Idalia and Eric, once they were safe behind walls. That's what I contend this episode's all about. Eric makes a really great point in this episode. He says two things, actually. It's only bad if you believe it's bad. That's one of the big things he says in this episode when it comes to Idalia's thoughts and feelings and intuitions about this house. And then he says something else. Are you serious? This is our house, Idalia. Things have changed. People take what's in front of them. That's it. End of story. And he has to say that, because if he doesn't say that, he has to deal with what he's done. That this world hasn't changed. But we usually give cover for the Walking Dead universe, essentially, mostly because it allows people to become the things that they were meant to be, something that we often say on the show, the idealized self, but also because there is a part of us that secretly wants that, because why not have an excuse to be your true self? We don't get to be that. So we give cover to the Walking Dead universe, but like here, this is the Walking Dead universe saying, well, you're still human. You still have to deal with what you've done, or find a way to deal with what you've done, even though this world doesn't allow you to do that often. But the second you find walls, and like they say in the episode, they've been together and on the run since the beginning of the fall, essentially, or maybe just before, but like they've never really had a place of their own inside that's safe, essentially. Do you think what they go through in this episode is a complete expression of guilt?
I mean, it's pretty obvious that they feel guilty about the choices that they've made. There's a lot of quick flashbacks to a specific moment that is later uncovered to be something a little more insidious than we thought it was. Having that play and then be clarified later in the episode really makes it clear to the viewer that they feel guilty. And that's why she's seeing the people that they killed. And that's why Eric is seeing the people that they killed. Yeah, that's why.
So actually, this is Aiden's comment, his beginning comment, is actually very interesting because it allows me to give you guys some news. Assuming the show gets a season 2, what characters from the Walking Dead universe would you like to see get their own episodes? Also, are there any characters you would like to see return from this season? Personally, I would love to see Leah Shaw, Elizabeth Kublik, Deanna, and the founding of Alexandria, Eastman, Rosita, Abe, and Eugene, Daniel Salazar, and more. We talked about this, I think, in one of the episodes, maybe one of that we premiered, right? The D episode, maybe? Or was it it was the Dr.
I think
Everett.
I was going to say it was a Dr. Everett episode.
And I'm going to say what I say to you, Aiden. No! No! I'll say this much. Would it be cool as a fan? I said this from the beginning. I said, I feel yes. Is it good for the Walking Dead universe on the whole? Like the popular franchise that needs to keep going? I don't know. I doubt it because of the suspension of disbelief as it comes to actors in terms of age, and then also having to cast de-aged actors, etc. Putting that aside, let's go back to the Tales of the Walking Dead. I heard rumors that Tales is already slated for a season 2. It's already received enough success to go on.
With 6 completely different stories, different characters, or do you think they will be continuations of what we already saw? It's really bothering me that this is all we get. I'm sorry. I get what they're doing and I respect it. I appreciate it. I think it's great. But for me personally, it's driving me freaking insane to know that I'm not going to see these characters again. I'm never going to know how it wraps up. I'm not okay with that. I'm not. I can't just be like, good job, guys. No, it's driving me nuts. Like, I need to know how this shit wraps up.
I think some episodes are more than others. Some I could just leave it where it is. Whereas other episodes, it's like, I would like to see it continue. Even if they only, like, continued 1 or 2 into season 2 and then told, like, 4 completely new stories, I think that'd be quite good.
Yeah, I feel somewhat the same as you, Jasmine. I mean, and you, Rachel. Like, yeah, it is a little frustrating because you grow to like these characters in
yes.
many senses. I mean, let's just say in terms of this episode could probably be left alone, right?
I think so. I mean, yeah. When I say that specifically, I guess I'm really talking about Evie and Joe. I need to see where Evie and Joe are.
I need more Terry Crews. Sorry.
Yeah.
Not sorry.
And Olivia. I mean,
I'm kidding. No, I did like Olivia. I did.
I would like to see a continuation of the Dr. Everett episode specifically. I found that abrupt ending when there was so much more that could have been. Yeah.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah. Although the reason why I could leave his episode, and this is one of, I think all of the episodes to varying degrees could be left alone, and for reasons which you can like label. The Amy Dr. Everett episode, I could leave because to me that's a tragedy in a sense. Like, oh, he's gonna always do this. There's not gonna be an end for this. That's how he's choosing to deal with the universe. And
I'd almost like to see him like go crazy. Maybe seeing Amy die that way, maybe he like goes off the deep end and just like completely loses it. Maybe he goes a completely different direction and like just goes absolutely fucking insane. That might be interesting.
You know what that made me think of right away? Better Call Saul. Because in a sense, Jimmy puts on Saul to deal with the world. And he leans into it when he needs to. It almost didn't work when they were doing the divorce proceedings, but definitely didn't work when he finally contacted Kim Wexler after all those years in the Gene timeline. It just stopped working and he went crazy. He lost his footing. He tried to keep doing the same thing he was doing. I like that. But I think what I would like even more is knowing that he's going to continue doing what he's doing, is that he's a prop, meaning he's an obstacle in somebody else's way in another episode where the episode isn't about him. It's about somebody else. They run into him and he's like a barrier. And maybe he meets a demise. Maybe he could somehow meet a redemption arc of some sort. The jury's out on that in terms of how I'd want it to go down versus what would be smarter. Let me continue reading some of these comments if you don't mind. He also says he would love to hear what episode of each you would pick as your favorite.
Honestly, the first two are probably tied for first. Followed up by this one. Devon would be my next. And honestly, I think, well...
The D episode?
Yeah, D would be last.
Interesting. Okay.
I am a firm believer that the anthology style is fine. And I don't need continuations. I don't need to rehash old content. I'm just okay moving forward. So I get that that's what everyone is saying. They're all like, I want more of this. I don't know that I'd like it as much. If we were going to go back and rehash about old characters over and over again, I don't think that'd be as interesting to me.
I don't know if I'm rehashing something that I've said before in the show, but something that I'm coming to realize, and I've said this on Twitter at the very least in response to some comments on the D or the Dr. Everett episode. I think the fan response to Tales of the Walking Dead is a lot like Star Trek The Next Generation. When it first came out in 87, which when you think about it, it's like, oh, 87? What? At the time, Star Trek fans largely rejected it. Largely. Because they were like, that's not the Trek I grew up on. The campy, Kirk gets the alien every episode, bedded.
Gets the alien.
Yeah, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But guess what happened? People who weren't Star Trek fans before, kind of like myself, really loved it. They're like, this is so much more accessible to me. And it's an anthology series, which eventually builds an arc because they realize we can't be like the old Trek, which, by the way, is mostly probably due to Gene Roddenberry's passing and the torch being passed to like guys like Brandon Braga and Michael Piller. So it became this anthology series with overarching themes throughout either a season or more than one season, like revisiting certain themes, which then added more flavor to people who stepped into the Star Trek universe. What I'm trying to say is, sorry, I know it's a long explanation. This show could be like that, where at the time, as TWD fans, this is strange to us, but it may be this more than any other spinoff. Like Fear the Walking Dead, I think they may have tried to do something like this, where they did something different and roped in other people, and it worked. Because there are people who watched Fear the Walking Dead who had never watched The Walking Dead before, whether it's the first 3 seasons or when they jumped in on the 4th one and they're like, oh, this is something interesting. It's like The Walking Dead, but it's like, it's different. But this, more than any other series, the City of the Dead now, which was formerly Isle of the Dead, and Walking Dead World Beyond, and probably the Daryl spinoff, this series, more than any other series, is going to be like that for exactly the reverse reasons. It's a pure anthology series. And I keep thinking about a series like The Twilight Zone and how, of course, you have to fit in a satisfying beginning, middle, and end in a short span of time. But, you know, The Twilight Zone back in the day, it had to appeal to a wide audience. So some of the themes basically beat you over the head. You know, there's not much to explain. There's no deeper inline context. That's where The Walking Dead comes in. They're like, we're not going to treat you like idiots. We're not going to spell it out for you. And that's been consistent. That's the flavor, as I think something we said just earlier. That's the flavor that The Walking Dead brings writ large, but especially in these little tales, because they didn't want to make it about things we've seen. They may introduce certain nuggets and Easter eggs here and there, but nothing significant enough to be like, oh, Daryl, or Sasha and Tyrese, or like, no, we're not going to treat you like idiots. There's going to be just as much underlying context to this series as there are our other series like Fear the Walking Dead and then The Walking Dead World Beyond. But this is an opportunity to open up the universe to other experiences, other ideas and stories, and things that we have not done before. We don't know it at the time now, but I think this is the show that people are going to remember a lot. They're going to remember The Walking Dead, obviously. It's like the first Star Wars trilogy, right? Okay, you always love 4 through 6, I think it is, like the old ones.
Yep, it's 4 through 6.
And they will always be in the pantheon of legendary, like The Walking Dead, let's say. But like some people may like the first 3 or the last 7, 8, 9 or whatever the fuck they are, the new ones. Some people might like that, and that might introduce them to the greater universe. This is the show, I think, more than Fear the Walking Dead, more than Walking Dead. Sorry, I know I went on, but I felt like I'm realizing that we're on the precipice of something great with this show. We don't know it yet. We feel like it isn't, but I think this is it. This is what gets people back to really enjoying The Walking Dead, maybe even introducing them to this universe where they might not have before.
I don't know, man. I feel like coming in watching these episodes, I don't see how it would draw anyone back into watching the main show or even Fear the Walking Dead, because none of these characters appear on either one of those shows. There are going to be a lot of people like me who watch it for character development. I get attached to these characters. I want to see more of these characters. And when you don't get that, there's no reason to keep watching. There's no reason to go delve into something else if the characters you already know and love aren't a part of it.
But to counter that, I feel like some people do just like anthology series. You don't, and I don't personally, but there's other TV shows that are like just anthology based and they have an audience base. So potentially there are people that don't need that continuation.
I completely agree. Like, for example, I love the Black Mirror series. Those are all anthology. Beginning, middle, end, that's it. But you get the beginning, the middle, the end. You have a problem, a resolution, a solution. You have all of that. It's all wrapped up nicely. I don't feel like I'm personally getting that from a lot of these Tales episodes.
I wonder if that has to do with the fact, though, that like there's such a precedent for Walking Dead. There was no precedent to Black Mirror before any of us started watching it.
Absolutely. Yes.
But
Right.
then maybe people who are just watching it and they've never watched anything else, then maybe that would...
That's all I mean.
They
and
probably would really enjoy this.
As much as
That's all
I
I
didn't
mean.
like it, the D episode was probably really smart, like to your point, Rachel, because it does give them a segue in.
Yes.
It's not a huge segue, even though I was like, man, I don't want to retread old stuff. Makes sense if you're trying to lead people in to The Walking Dead, which is important because they're going to have to try to revitalize because the numbers are not where they once were.
And if we're ranking episodes, D was my number 2. So just saying.
Okay, I want to hear your rankings though. Like,
Yeah,
what
let's go
did
into
you
your
guys
rankings.
rank them?
Evie and Joe was my favorite. I loved the story, the characters. I loved all of it. It felt to me the most true to the Walking Dead feel. And then that's probably why they started the whole series out with that one, I think. It was a good call. And it was lighter. There was a bit of humor. D was my second favorite. Even though it was a little wonky as far as timelines go, I think we came up with an okay solution to that, so I'll allow it. Gina and Blair were probably my third favorite.
Oh, I thought that was going to be her last.
After Evie and Joe and Dee, it's kind of hard to put the rest in an order. They're all just sort of lumped together for
as
me after
That's
that.
fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always fair, right? But
I feel like I'm gonna hit very generic person on the internet thoughts here. It's the ones that most closely like resonate to like The Walking Dead that I enjoyed. So like my favorite episode was the D episode because it felt like Walking Dead, and then the Dr. Everett episode It felt like a little bit like World Beyond, the Dr. Everett episode, so I liked that. It felt familiar, and I like that like sense of familiarness. And I didn't really like episode 5. I couldn't stand.
Watch this.
The Gina and Blair episode, I didn't really enjoy. I just this episode, it just felt like too much like psychology and not enough Walking Dead for me personally.
Which is
and
the
then like
factor.
I find, and I don't know why I just didn't like the Evie and Joe episode. I think it's because it was the first one and my expectations were too high. More than it actually being a bad episode, it was just like I went into it with too higher expectations, so it disappointed me.
You went from one party with one specific theme that you're used to, and then you went to like a sex party. No, I'm kidding. And you're like, whoa, I don't know if I like this. I'm just kidding. No, for me, actually, what's funny about what you just said is that, okay, your analysis is similar to most people's analysis that I run into on social media or people that criticize the show. However, you're awesome and you contextualize it in a way that's honest, not angry about it. You're like, I like this, but it's not what I'm used to. It's not what I'm familiar with. So it's not my favorite. You don't hate it, is what I mean.
I don't hate. I can agree with people, but I have like an awareness. Just because I didn't like it necessarily doesn't mean that it's bad.
Right. Or that I don't feel that it's bad. It's a bad show, right?
Yeah.
By the way, this is the same exact feeling that you get after leaving a relationship for like, I don't know how many years, like a decade. You're like, oh, I'm used to this. And then you try to date again. It's like, I don't know if I like this. This is strange and new. It's nice. I don't think it's bad, but maybe it's great. I think I might like this.
Maybe.
Oh man, am I in love with you? Anyway, whatever. So my favorites.
Went so quickly.
Whoa, pump the brakes.
I'm not gonna list the rest of the episodes that I liked, but I'm gonna hit on one thing the one that I absolutely loved was Devon, the 5th episode.
Okay, you are definitely going to need to go into detail on that one then, please.
Least favorite.
Right. No,
Doesn't it seem like
too.
it would be Dave's
Mine too.
favorite though?
It would.
Come on.
because it has the first 3 letters of my
favorite.
name. I mean,
Of course.
right. It's all about me, guys.
It's psychologically deep.
Devon,
There's a lot of layers to it. Like, of course, Dave
Oh
liked
my
it.
gosh.
Yeah, it's clever in construction. The filming of it, though the actual effects in terms of the flashbacks.
How is it clever? We've seen this before, is why I'm asking. It's not a new and unique concept.
Yeah. Doing it in medias res style of story is not new.
Oh, I wanted to stab myself in the ear with the jazz. I couldn't stand it.
Really? That was
The
my
music,
favorite part.
I hated the music.
I loved it so much.
Hated it.
I loved it. And then when I found out why it was there, just because of the French Creole, like the possible branching out of the French Creole Acadians, etc.
Yeah.
That made it even better. But I like the kind of noir-esque version. But that's the thing. I came into this wanting something new. I don't care that I don't get links to the greater Walking Dead universe characters, or do you know what I mean? Like the connections that we can make to all these other people in the universe. It would be nice, but I can see why they didn't do that, because in a sense, it's the reason why I got into this podcast to begin with, in one specific sense, and that's I didn't read the comic books. What I wanted to do was be able to judge these episodes on their merits. And so when you watch Tales and you don't get those links to things that we've seen, I can now remove that variable. And so far, all the episodes except for D, I can do that. And then I'm allowed to now enjoy it based on what it's brought us, the merits that they're trying to bring to each individual episode. So of those episodes, I think Devon was the cleverest. I think in a sense it balanced best the desire to do something new, clever, filmed very, very well filmed, and also gives a little bit of that Walking Dead flavor, but in a way that's so twisted. Like Mercy is murder. Mercy is giving somebody a death sentence and twisting some of the themes in the Walking Dead universe, like that stuff that I love the most, the underlying themes that the universe tells us. Oh, living behind walls, civilizations crumble. No, this one stayed up, but it crumbled on the inside rather than from an external force. They got to be who they wanted to be before and after the apocalypse. But it's almost as if that's Devon's enemy, in a sense. Going after the thing that kept you yourself, or deciding that you want to be something more, to strive for a bigger ideal. What I like most about this episode more than anything else is that once I watched it, I kept turning it over in my mind. There were like nuggets and gifts that kept unfurling in my mind as a result of watching it. I kept liking it more and more. And this episode is turning out to be somewhat that way too, but not nearly so far as much, because there was more of a satisfying ending to Devon compared to this episode, which also brings us back to this episode. Hello. Sharondy says, my Tales ranking is 2, Gina Blair, 4, Amy and Dr. Everett. I didn't expect that. Evie Joe, 3 is D. Well, that also surprises me considering how much she hates Alpha. 6, which is this episode, La Doña. And 5 is Devon. She hated Devon the most.
I didn't hate any of them. Just to be clear, I didn't hate any of these episodes.
Oh,
but
no, I got that.
Felt differently about them all.
That being said, like, I didn't say, like, I actively hated any of the episodes, but, like,
right.
in Devon, it couldn't even hold my attention. I didn't dislike it, but I was just sat there, and I was, like, zoning out, and then I, like, zoned back in, and I was like, what the fuck's just happened? Like, that's how much it just couldn't hold me.
You mentioned that phenomenon before. Yeah.
And that's a problem. Like, if an episode can't hold your attention, I feel that too sometimes, Jasmine. And that's how I know I'm like, this isn't that great.
You've also contextualized it. You've couched it in your desire to see familiarity with the Walking Dead universe too. So we have that
Fair.
extra bit of. I usually say what you're saying right now is very important. Oh, if it can't hold your interest. But then now that we have the extra context, I know why.
That being said, if it didn't have kind of Walking Dead in the title,
yes,
I probably would have switched it off.
Oh, okay, fair.
But because I feel like a dedication to like this show and obviously like Walking Dead and stuff, I sit through and watch it when in reality it's not holding me. That's why I was kind of like glad I was on holiday last week, because I like literally would have been able to give nothing for Devon. I couldn't tell you what happened. I can tell you like 5 minutes at the start and like 2 minutes at the end, and I could not remember anything else happened in that episode.
It's fair. It's totally fair. Sharon says Gina Blair was by far my favorite. Sharon says, even though I didn't like all the episodes, I like that they got adventurous and gave us different stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, Sharon says, this actually made me think of Diabolical, the boys animated series, where each episode is a different animation style, may not have anything connecting it to the characters on the main show. Yeah, that's a great comparison. There is the theme, the specter of The Walking Dead. It's in the universe, but like it doesn't deal directly with what we see on The Boys, let's say.
Having said that, though, another complaint I might have, and obviously this was a choice, but I would have really liked to see more walkers in all of these episodes. In all 6 episodes, they were focusing more on the characters. I get that, but I still would have liked to see more walkers.
I think when we did see walkers, it frustrated me a little bit because they weren't traditional Walking Dead walkers. They acted slightly differently, like especially in like the Gina Blair episode where one of them was like, it didn't look right, and it was just like it annoyed me as a Walking Dead fan.
That actually kind of goes to Sharon D's comment about comparing it to Diabolical, the boys' animated miniseries. I think they almost had to be different because of the mood that episode was trying to establish needed that particular walker in a sense. But still, that's not going to change how you feel.
Well, in the Gina Blair episode, we have to remember took place right at the beginning of the apocalypse. So the walkers would be a little bit different and act a little bit different right at the beginning of the fall.
Kind of like they did on The Walking Dead, right? It kind of looked a little different.
Like Fear, like the first few episodes of Fear. They were different then, too.
It's funny how we don't see more of those kind of like, kind of just turned walkers, and they don't look as mangly, skull, bony face thing.
Right. They wouldn't be yet.
Right, but like even those who have just turned kind of still like, look, I mean, aside from like after...
Like emaciated almost.
Yeah, after Sadiq did look fresh and didn't look as mangly, and I think most of that is due to the fact that he's a protagonist, so you don't want to fuck up your protagonist's faces as actors.
Fair.
But then after that, like, it seems like everybody who just turns looks awful right from the jump. Like, awful. Not like in the beginning of The Walking Dead, where they kind of just looked like people who are having a bad day.
Well, I think of like, I think back to like Amy when she turned and how like pristine she looked, like a dead body, like just fair and
just very corpsey.
Which goes to my Sadiq comment too. Like, if you wanted to play with that, you wanted to connect with Amy, and if she looked too mangly when she first emerged as a walker, I think you'd be like more frightened than like feel sorry for her too, and feel like what Andrew's going through. Same thing with Sadiq. It's so tragic that it makes me feel things when I remember it. In terms of this episode, okay, it feels and seems pretty cut and dry. However, once you finish watching it, maybe watching it again actually gives you a little bit more clarity on motivations and why this episode turns out the way that it does. For me, at least, it is kind of like Devon. I started kind of turning this episode over in my mind. I watched it the beginning of this week, Sunday night, late at night, lights down, got the same reaction one would get watching it beginning to end without interruption. Sorry, Bridget. I felt that horror aspect. I enjoyed that aspect, but just like some of you, I finished it. I'm like, for the last episode, and kind of similar to the Amy Dr. Everett episode, there was a bit of like a disappointment or an upset for me, where it's like kind of like you, Rachel. It's kind of like, what does this mean? What did I watch something that's literal, or did I watch something that is figurative? And then I kept turning it over and turning over my mind. And then I finally watched it just before we got on here. And I'm like, oh, there is so much more to this episode than it seems. The way it seems is these people feel guilty once they're inside walls. They start looking at what they did to get here. The Dahlia at first, and then Eric later on realizes, okay, this is weighing on me. I can't not be a person once now that I'm safe and express these guilty feelings because there's trauma involved. I want to throw in something that connects this episode aside from the hallucinations, which is obvious. Hallucinations, mental illness, but there's something else going on here too. Folie à deux. Folie à deux is one person, the primary, which is Idalia, clearly. She experiences hallucinations, extreme sense of guilt and paranoia. She says in this episode, like, something's gonna get me. Eventually, Eric is the secondary, the one who is diagnosed with the folie à deux, because he starts seeing the delusions himself. Now, I don't know if it's the one that's the same as in Blair Gina, because that one was, and I can't remember the exact term, was primary experiences, secondary experiences, and then they share it together and they egg each other on in terms of their hallucination. The other form of folie à deux is when you're away, when the secondary, the one who's diagnosed with folie à deux, is away from the primary, their hallucinations cease. And I'm starting to think it's that one, because Eric, by the end of it, realizes, oh no, the hallucinations I've been experiencing were all because I was around you. He snaps out of it first. He's like, you're doing this, Idalia. You're doing this. And he realizes, you're doing this to me. You're making me feel guilty, first of all.
I thought of that when I was watching the episode. I was like, oh, this is shared psychosis. We already did this concept in episode 2. There is another way to look at it, though. In those final scenes where Eric is yelling, you're doing this, Idalia, stop, you're doing this. While I was like, okay, that could be in reference to his shared psychosis, it could also be the episode is shown from Idalia's perspective. And Eric is standing there and Idalia's throwing stuff and talking to nothing.
Yeah.
And he could be like, you're doing this. You're acting super crazy right now. And so I thought, okay, it's one or the other. Either she's psychotic and we're seeing only what she's seeing, or there's shared psychosis.
How do you explain Eric's own issue when he went to the gate?
Oh, and he sees
Maria.
the lady.
And he's having a hard time. This is like the first time that he's like having this intense delusional state, and it's catching him off guard. He really thought he saw her, Maria.
Well, and I would argue, like, yeah, sure, he could be experiencing the shared psychosis, but that doesn't necessarily mean that at the end, that's what he's yelling about.
Oh, you're saying this is right?
Like,
You can
because it
it's
could
still from her
be in
perspective.
process. It's not like all of a sudden instantaneously he also has the psychotic break. Like, it doesn't have to happen that way. There in the case studies, it did talk about exposure over time led to the shared psychosis.
Right.
So either way, obviously, there's a lot of hallucinations happening in this episode. Clearly,
Yeah. To wrap what you're saying up is that even us seeing Eric showing up at the gate is still from Idalia's perspective. Having this really hard time coming to grips with what he just saw is still from her perspective. Like, maybe he didn't see it at all and assumed that he was going through something.
That's a possible explanation. I mean, he could be like, this chick is going nuts. I need to get out of here before she
And she stopped
really
him.
turns on me. And she stops him in the creepiest way possible. Out of nowhere, a pickaxe comes forward and closes the gate. And she's like, no.
You're staying. You're not getting away with this.
That's terrifying.
You're not going
You need to
anywhere.
feel how I feel.
I mean, if he was trying to leave, he'd be like, okay. You have a giant pickaxe now, so I'm going to wait.
Okay.
Except now you're having
yeah.
another mental break on the porch, so I can't get past you because you're flinging your knife around yelling, you're not real.
You know, I can accept that. I'm still like leaning towards the folie à deux, but
Either way,
I'm with you.
There's more than one way to look at it. That's all.
I think it's going to be my point throughout this watch is that, yeah, you think that it's literal. It's kind of like the D episode. You think that it's literal, but it's more. There are themes working against each other in the episode, but more so here in this episode. You can interpret the facts differently than they're presented because we're dealing with maybe mental illness, another thread. We're dealing with folie à deux, possibly another thread. Sharon D says the grain used to make Idalia's bread was infected with ergot, and after consuming the bread, they began to see visions and hear voices. This is a possible explanation for the Salem witch trials. Oh, That's interesting. However, Idalia starts hearing the whispers before they enter the compound. Now, it could be both. It could be her feeling the guilt and seeing, oh, did I hear a whisper? But then maybe the bread exacerbated that. By the way, similar to Charity, my big initial impression theory was methane leak, red mercury, which is not real, but some people say it's red. Yeah, red mercury. It's supposed to be a cure-all, but it doesn't exist. Found in the throats of Egyptian pharaohs in the tombs. My theory was gas leak, but the red blood on the walls.
I wrote, is there a gas leak? ? In my notes.
But the more I tried to affirm my bias is like Dr. Everett, the less I enjoyed it and the less it made sense also. Like you could argue that, but I kept looking for different evidences like the blood on the walls, quote unquote. Maybe that was it.
Well, there's no lethargy, and that's a really huge side effect of gas leaks. And
dizziness, vomiting, none of that.
No, you don't see any of that.
So it falls apart. Bacteria, no, the dizziness, vomiting, cough, none of that was there. Except for the end where she's like going to the basement. There are tons of dead bodies here.
That was why I was like, is there a gas leak? Oh,
sulfur? I don't know if sulfur, excess sulfur in concentrations cause dizziness, hallucination. I think it would cause headaches more than anything else.
Well, Eric does have a headache.
Jasmine does have nothing to say to my bullshit that I just said right now.
Eric does have a headache. So actually, there is another symptom. I didn't even think of that until just now.
Does he have a headache?
He does. Remember, he's grabbing his head and he's like, my head. And she like takes him into the kitchen and she gives him the water. And he's like, what did you put in this?
Yeah, I love that little bit. And that's the thing. That's like the Gina's fingernail polish that's chipped off. That might be blood. The smoke that comes out of Blair's mouth when she first comes back.
Maybe she has Munchausen.
Like okay, explain that. I know what you mean, but...
Okay, so Munchausen is a disorder in which
Munchausen syndrome. Yeah.
You essentially poison the person that you're the caretaker of so that they need you more, and then you feel like fulfilled in your caretaking.
Well, it doesn't have to go down that way, but it's more that
I don't know. I just
see
threw it out
yourself
there
as a
because
victim.
he accused her of putting something in the water. But now I'm like, wait, is a difference in taste, is that a symptom of gas leaks? I have no idea.
What if okay, I have other theories, but I have to say this one now because it just popped into my head. What if Idalia did the same thing to Maria? And Eric, not knowing what happened between them, still, he's with her. He's been with her throughout the entire time, gets her back and deletes all these other people that they were with. When they try to question Idalia, he defends her, not knowing she's had mental illness the entire time.
It was something that crossed my mind. Her delivery of that line, like, well, you jumped to defend me. It was just...
When you probably shouldn't have.
It was so callous, and I was like, something ain't right here. This is weird. Because if I had been accused of murdering someone and had not indeed done it, I don't think I'd be so quick to jump down this guy's throat to be like, well, you're the one who defended me. Like, that to me makes you sound super guilty.
Yes, but, and this is what I love the most about the construction of this narrative, is that yes, but he didn't have to kill all those people. He could have just talked. Do you know what I mean? Like, they could have hashed it out, worked something out.
I mean, could he? We don't know. We have no idea what happened. Let's be honest. We have no idea. And that's another beef I have.
True. I think that's what I like the most about it, because it really does, because the sheer fact that he says this house is ours, in this universe you take what's in front of you, that's it, and that's that, end of story. That's why it's not frustrating to me, because they say it. I did this because that's the way the world works. And yet I like that there's this tug of war between their moralities and the way the world is, because it plays with our sensibilities in a way that we don't often get to in the Walking Dead universe, period. Like, now we're talking about the Walking Dead universe. We learned to write them off, these moral quandaries. We acknowledge them. We're like, oh yeah, the world's awful. People have to do awful things, blah, blah, blah. But they, in this episode, force you to tangle with them. I thought they did it in a clever way.
How far into the apocalypse do you wager this is?
Bridget, what do you think?
What?
How far into the apocalypse is this
present,
episode?
Bridget. Stop seeing the Jesus climb off the crosses in your mind.
No, I actually really didn't like that part. Travis, this is a rare episode in which Travis watched this with me because we were going to bed, and he looked at me and he goes, does this actually scare you?
Right.
Does this scare anyone?
Is this working?
I bet it would
Made me
scare
laugh.
like people who are really religious though. I mean, I kept thinking about
I'm
like
pretty religious.
I mean,
that was not scary to me.
Yeah, no.
okay, so Uncanny Valley
The
was
CGI
present.
kind of ruined.
Okay.
This place hasn't already been ransacked. I don't know. Pretty early. I would assume like 2, maybe 3 years.
Electricity, running
Okay.
water, hot
I like-
water.
I like that.
They say.
Oh,
Interesting.
yeah,
I like
that's
that.
true. So I didn't think it was right away. It seems like some time has passed. People have clearly been able to like make it like in groups outside of walls. So I would assume it was a little bit further in. Not crazy late or anything. Well, that's why I thought maybe there was a gas leak, because I was like, maybe this place runs off of like a gas tank.
Propane or something like that.
Yeah, and so then I thought maybe that had something to do with it. But this episode is whatever you want it to be, right? I mean,
Sure.
Realistically, that's what it is.
But we
It
gotta
is what
throw
you
it out
want it
there,
to be.
right?
So
Well, I asked that question because I was just very like, huh? When Doña Alma died, like this bitch has made it this far and she just falls and hits her head on the
Okay.
table. That's how
It
she
has a
died.
heart
Like,
attack?
that's-
can we
Right.
That's how you,
discuss
like,
that? Can we discuss that
That's
for a
how
second?
you die.
Can we discuss
Like, is that
that?
even allowed?
Was that a heart
Jasmine.
attack or was that choking? Because that's what it said in the subtitles.
Do we think that she ever actually even existed?
I'll get to that. Yes.
I see.
yes.
Yes, I do think she actually existed because the bird was being taken care of. Like, the bird would be dead if nobody was there feeding it, first of all.
But did the bird even exist? Did the house even exist?
Okay, do any of these episodes really exist?
Do you
We
exist?
can go that far.
With this,
Guys,
Jasmine,
oh.
do you
this
exist?
is my genuine thought
Are you real
process.
right now?
Are you just a dream
Seriously.
in someone else's mind?
Wait, guys,
Hear me
what
out.
if La Doña was Madison?
Oh God! Oh no!
No,
No!
I know what you mean,
no.
Jasmine. I think about that too.
Can you guys hear me out on this one?
Yes, absolutely.
I think it can be interpreted in multiple ways, but the fact that they found this house and there's like running water and stuff like that, are they even here, or is this like a product of some kind of, not to say purgatory, but some kind of like state of mental kind of fucked up? But then also, the fact that she refers to the walkers, I don't remember what word she uses in Spanish, but like the sleepwalkers. Like,
Yeah.
are they just sleepwalking? Are they
Sonambulos,
like...
yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
somnambulous.
like are they actually sleepwalking? Is any of this actually happening? Because there's so many things that don't make sense. Like, not just like the episodes of Psychosis, but the actual house itself existing, having running water, not being ransacked in a zombie apocalypse. The woman who looked clean and was not dressed practically.
Pristine white.
Randomly died in a strange way that kind of fit the narrative and allowed them to stay. It just feels like everything at each stage, it doesn't feel real.
Herschel's farm existed and they were clean and they were like out in the middle of nowhere. I got the impression that this house was very difficult to find. The only reason they even knew is because they were told where it was.
To add to that, they've reached the stage in the apocalypse where they've killed people and that's just how it is. Killing has to be somewhat acceptable. That's how the world is now. So that kind of suggests that it's a little bit further on than like Herschel, maybe.
Right.
for me.
Sure.
Savior's level 2 years
But
in.
if our group hadn't have shown up and fucked everything up, how much longer could the farm have survived? Up until we see the herd come in, obviously. But similarly, this house is very isolated. Like I said, the only reason they even knew it existed is because someone told them that it was there. I totally get what you're saying, Jasmine, and I think it's completely plausible. However, I can't wrap my head around that only because I feel like it would be a complete waste of all of our time, the viewers' time. To say that it didn't exist.
All right,
to say that none of this was real.
Explain the
you
Blair
always
Gina
hate that.
episode.
To say
then.
that this- yeah.
Explain the Blair Gina episode then, because if that's wasting viewers' time, then go and
Wait,
watch
no.
the Blair Gina
Yes.
episode.
No, we sum that up, remember? It's a video game. They're video game characters. This is a video game. Blair and Gina were a video game episode, and I can get behind that. That's why
Right.
they keep respawning.
I don't know if I can get behind
Rachel
that,
hates
so-
things that are figurative. It's just to give the audience.
I do.
She doesn't like things that aren't literal.
I'm
need
a
it
very
to be
literal
real.
bitch.
Yeah.
The dough was done.
The dough. I guess that meant the dough was done. Wrap that point up. Firstly, I want to mention as an addendum to walls give you your humanity back, but that might be a bad thing. Their relationship to begin with was a relationship of convenience. They got together just prior to the fall or just after the fall. We've been together for as long as this outbreak has existed, etc. or we've been on the run ever since this whole thing started. Once they start getting to the house, they have to realize that we're stuck with each other in time of peace. A lot like Sasha and Abraham, in a sense. So, if you want that little Walking Dead connection, here it is. Like, once they realized they didn't have to be with each other, that they weren't the last two plausible couples on Earth, options started opening up. Or they start realizing...
You mean Abraham and Rosita?
Sorry, what did I say? Abraham and Sasha?
Sasha.
I meant, sorry. I meant Abraham and
Rosita.
Rosita. Thank you. The last people on Earth. They realize, we don't have to be with one another. We don't have to procreate the species or whatever you want to think on that front. Okay, now we have to actually deal with what it means to be together now that we're safe. Put that aside, because that's obvious. One thing that got stuck into my head, it was never clear which episode really was 35 years in the future. I almost want to say that this is the one that's 35 years in the future. Let me explain. Why I think that is because of how long this lady may have survived and how these two people might not even be real or maybe figments of her past. She's in this house alone. She's been in this house alone. She's taken care of it alone for such a long time. And it might be longer than we suspect on the heels of the last episode, which we can probably safely say is 35 years in the future. What we do to survive as hermits. We've got that connection as well. But definitely with her for as long as the time that she might literally have been out there, ostensibly. But figuratively, she may have been out there for 30, 35 years. And right now is when Doña Alma is dealing with her trauma. And every year she might be going through this, what she had to do to live here. And I almost have to say, how I feel this way is when Eric is actually looking through the book of photos, there seems to be a photo of Idalia blowing out birthday candles. And that maybe Maria was the other girl in the photos.
Does add some credibility to why the bird is saying some really creepy stuff.
Right.
That makes me feel like someone was murdered in that house.
Right. What if Idalia and Doña Alma are one and the same? What if Idalia actually made it and killed Eric? And that she's reliving a piece of her past that she wished had gone differently, that maybe she wished they had died together. And she wasn't the one to survive. And what if she kept playing it over every year on the same day, over and over again? And this is why I want to use this as a kind of dovetail into why her dying that way is unsatisfying. She chokes on something or has a heart attack and then bangs her head on the kitchen table. It's weird and unceremonious. Had we seen this episode literally, we would have been like, that's how this ends? After 35 years, this lady, she chokes on her stew, which is called something in Spanish.
Guisado?
Guisado, yeah. So that's how she goes. But if you look at it differently, this lady's been torturing herself. It's just like Dr. Every. This guy has been surviving on the science. This guy's been surviving for the sake of survival. And this lady, what has kept her going? Maybe it was guilt. Every year, it's just guilt, guilt, guilt.
I love this concept. However, if that is the truth, it should have been a lot more clear. You shouldn't have to be the one telling us this. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit of an idiot when it comes to TV shows, and I do need to be spoon-fed some shit. I don't want to be going this deep into my own brain to come up with my own concept of what the fuck's going on. I do need a little bit of guidance. That's why I watch TV, because life is already fucking chaotic and I have to make sense of real life. I go to the television to be told what the fuck's happening, not to figure it out.
But that's why I said, like,
my good guys to be good, my bad guys to be bad.
Really, this is
Thank you.
whatever you want it to be. This episode in particular, all of these episodes really, but this one in particular is whatever you want it to be.
I wanted it to be better.
Hey!
I agree with Bridget in that it's not necessarily set up to be interpreted in one way. I think they've intentionally written the episode so you can decide how you want to interpret it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm not stuck on this theory really, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. And I was like, oh, yeah, hold on. This kind of makes sense.
I think that's a really cool concept.
And let me applaud you because I think about this a lot. And I don't know for how long I've been thinking about this, but I've said this on Twitter before in response to certain things. There is a merit to coming away with an episode with just your gut reaction. Like the episode should be clear enough for you to enjoy it without needing us. It shouldn't need us. You shouldn't need a podcast to tell you how to feel about something, first of all. And we never tell you how to feel. But you shouldn't need which, okay, most podcasts do. You should hate this episode. But like, but what I mean is like, you shouldn't need a podcast to decide what this episode was, what it meant, or to be explained, oh, that's why this is significant. You shouldn't. A show should be complete on its own and accessible.
Yes.
However, since when has the no, and I just want to hammer this point. I want to beat this point to the ground, is that it does weigh on me. As a human with integrity, it weighs on me. Because here I am telling you why this is cool. Why this may be cool for you. But it does weigh on me that it's not clear. As just a person who watches television, judging things on their own merits, like we said earlier, it does weigh on me. But the reason why people watch us is because, hey, I don't know if I like this episode, but let me hear what they have to say about it. That's what keeps me going. As much as we say we are Squawking Dead, people do tune in to filter those thoughts of others who may have ideas on this show through our lens, thoughts, and voices. And we may disagree on those, but we'll still say, hey, I like that you thought that, at least. This is the worst case scenario. I like that you thought that, even though I don't agree with you. This is why I'm okay with being who we are. Like, with not, like, and because I get where you're coming from. This is why I appreciate what you said, because we need that voice. We need to be, I like that, oh, it wasn't as accessible. And so in response to all the shit that I just said, do you think this episode, in the way that D was straightforward?
I think it can be.
Linear?
No. But like straightforward, like, oh, here's a beginning, middle, and end. I understood the story, even though the ending was unsatisfying. Do you think you come away with this episode saying, hey, is that it? Or is there something more that I missed? Straightforward means, oh, I get it.
Personally, I did enjoy the episode up until the ending. It was the ending that made me go, huh?
Right. So not as straightforward.
And then I sort of questioned everything that I saw before that. But up until the end,
it felt
I did enjoy it. It scared me. It engaged me. When he was talking to Maria, I'm like, what's going on? Oh my goodness. And they did give us little nuggets of what led them there and you know what I mean? Like, not the total picture, but until the ending. And so many TV shows and movies, for that matter, for me personally, have been ruined because of a bad ending.
When it isn't straightforward, right?
Correct.
To me, and this is exactly why I like Devon, in medias res, I don't know what's going on initially. And yeah, eventually you do figure it out, but this is like the reverse. It feels straightforward. It starts off completely making sense. It starts off like a Walking Dead episode, but then like it just takes a hard right somewhere along the way. And so it makes you completely rethink what just happened. Personally, I like that. I didn't like it at first, but then the more I acknowledged that ending, the more I was like, I need to go back. I need to understand this episode better. Maybe I didn't on first watch. And that's a good, useful gimmick. Or one could look at this as a gimmick that A didn't work or B did work. Or one could look at this and say, oh no, that was purposeful. You need to watch this again to understand this maybe better, or look at this a different way. And I like that. I like when you see something differently on second watch.
Goodbye, audience. I have prior engagements.
We love you, and we'll see you soon, hopefully, for episode 200.
I'm going to leave you with this. Did she choke or did she have a heart attack? Because if she choked, if Alma choked, Eric's response to her choking is dubious. Because he just stands there and kind of does like, well,
let's see how this plays out.
Yep.
But
I'll leave you with
Idalia
that.
does the same, too.
It's bothersome. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to go. And that was just the last piece that I had to say. So,
okay,
bye.
We'll talk about that. Bye, Bridget. Enjoy your day.
Before we move on to that, I will just say, like, over the course of us discussing the episode, I do think how much I enjoyed the episode is increased just by talking about it, which is why the podcast is so great.
Thank you. I live for that. As a watcher of the podcast yourself and somebody who now is involved with the podcast because you give it money, I appreciate that.
I can't tell you how many times that has happened to me where I do not like an episode and then we talk about it and I'm like, you know what? I like this episode now. We've discussed it. We've talked about the things I didn't like and I feel better about it now. That has happened so many times for me.
It's definitely with this episode and definitely with some of the episodes of World Beyond.
In some places it was hard. Walking Dead World Beyond wasn't hard for me to enjoy, personally. But contending with the way others felt about it was one of those things where, like, okay, let me give you my point of view. You tell me why that's wrong. And then let me push back a little bit. And then you tell me why that's stupid. And then maybe we'll walk away. I love breaking even with just the fact that maybe we made you think differently about the episode, even if you landed in the same position. And I've mentioned this a lot. And that's fine with me. That's all I care about. Because convincing others of why this episode is good, let's say, just for the lack of the right terminology, convincing anybody of anything is difficult. It's almost impossible. But if you can get people to think differently, that's where you can build bridges both in trying to figure out a narrative, but also in life. Most of life is compromise. It is what it is, or let's agree to disagree. But when you get to that point, at least you're like, hey, I still like you. We don't have to always agree, but at least I see your point of view. And that's the best you can hope for in life.
Yeah.
So to me, that's where I live. I get goosebumps. I mean, I don't know if you can see this. You can't. I get goosebumps when that happens. And then if I can get somebody to think about something beyond let's agree to disagree, that interests me less. But I think that's kind of a cool thing when you can do that. I'm fine with people disagreeing and then being like, but at least I saw what you saw. And like, I still don't think that way, but at least I enjoyed your point of view. And that's, again, got goosebumps. So there you go. So let's go to Bridget's question, if I may. She had asked, did she choke or did she have a heart attack? Because if she choked, those two idiots were just standing there, which, by the way, reinforces my theory about her being way in the future and looking at this from another way.
You already know my thoughts.
Do I, though?
She never existed.
I have no idea.
I think she super existed. That's the difference. And I like that we're looking at it from different.
I like your theory. It's not something I thought of.
Can I throw a wrench? Just another notch on my end of the spectrum, the 35 years in the future spectrum. Why is her painting even there? Usually paintings are for people who have passed. Like, oh, this is my grandmother, and this is my way of remembering her. People don't. Okay, let me just say, most people, except for maybe rich people, don't usually have portraits of themselves in their own homes. Like portraits, like full-on portraits of just themselves, too. So like I could see somebody 35 years in the future getting bored and wanting to paint a self-portrait. That's my reasoning. Or maybe this is how I died. That's another link to another episode, another thread to another episode in Tales of the Walking Dead.
That could be as simple as it was a gift from someone. Maybe a family member painted it for her.
Oh, shut up.
It could be as simple as that.
Why aren't you reinforcing my biases? But that's fair. I just want to say that.
I only watched the episode once, so bear with me here if my details are a bit foggy. But after Doña Alma dies, Adalia, she sees this shrine, and she grabs that photo
of her
and sets the photo of Doña Alma, right? When she was younger, we all assumed
beautiful,
that was her. Okay, so, and she sets it in the shrine. She comes back later to that same shrine, and the picture has changed, correct? Did I see that wrong?
I didn't notice that. Oh, I wish I had the details on that. I don't know that was the case. That's all I'm saying. I didn't pay attention to that.
Okay.
Do you think it's changed from what to what, do you think?
It was young Alma to old Alma.
I think that might have just been another picture. But
like in a different area, because it looked like
maybe
it looked like it was in the same shrine. But that's why I said I only watched it the once. My details may be foggy, but I remember thinking the picture changed.
Interesting.
That's weird.
Well, that would, by the way, reinforce my theory that this is like 35 years in the future.
It would.
Why I say that specifically is because if it is 35 years later, it wouldn't be of old her. But that's the way she sees herself finally, as going through this story in her mind over and over again. Maybe the real picture was of her young, because we wouldn't get old person pictures.
The young person in the picture wasn't Adalia, though. It was of someone else.
It could have been.
It wasn't, though. It was clearly a different woman.
Sorry, it could have been her mother. That's what I was thinking. Like,
okay, her mother.
But yeah, and if she saw a picture of herself, that would be impossible according to my theory, because, well, it's 35 years in the future. There's no photo. She wouldn't have taken a photograph and processed it and exposed it.
Well, now we're in the apocalypse, right? Like, where'd she get the film?
Right. But if she's seeing it in her mind, and this is how I died, like the quote, this is how I died, kind of like the D episode, we can reframe this around the Alpha episode, the D episode. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just offering you what could be going on here.
An alternative.
Yeah. Tilting the tripod. That's all I do. Yeah. And honestly, having this theory is, to me, is so much more preferable than exposing what's going on here with science and like, oh, methane leak, gas leak, like, which I enjoyed at the time. I'd be like, oh, guys, it's just, I know you don't like things that are like mystical and not literal and whatever, like unexplainable phenomenon. So here's that solution. But then, like, the more I thought about what we talked about, like the threads to different episodes and like really looking at the psychological effects of guilt and maybe psychosis, but more on remorse, and then tying it up with the folie à deux, possibly, if that's what it is, that to me was more appealing and more satisfying once I looked at this episode again. And it makes sense. And again, maybe we're trying to confirm our biases about possible threads to other episodes. But honestly, it's more satisfying and enjoyable when we can see it that way. Considering that's what we so far, all of us kind of want at least some semblance of a thread between these episodes, considering it's an anthology series. So
I definitely did.
Let's go back to the literal world. If in fact it did play out that way with two people and them killing themselves at the end and whatever that is. So
Romeo and Juliet.
For different reasons and not liking each other by the end of it. I have to kill this person because they killed me, etc. But when Doña Alma, by the way, Alma in Spanish means soul. That's another something that to keep in the back of your mind that reinforces my theory. This is Idalia's soul. When she hit her head on the table, it seems like Idalia says to Eric, did you think that her hitting her head on the table was enough to kill the zombie part of her?
Oh, right.
I kind of like that because it shows how fucking dumb he is. But because she comes out of the ground. Anyway, so I thought
Does she, though?
Right,
Does she, though?
right. Does she though? That was another thing that like reinforced my theory on why this was from Alma, but maybe Idalia Alma, her point of view, because I don't die like Morgan. I don't die. And no, I'm forced to like relive this every year. I'm forced to relive this moment every year. And so it's just me. Nobody knows about this place. It's just me. I killed my then boyfriend to be able to be safe here. She can never get over the fact that something is trying to get her. So why she tells him to leave.
So in your theory, I like this theory. I do. I mean, I think it's pretty wildly out there, but I still like it. But in this theory, theoretically, shouldn't she have survived the end of the episode?
I think she does. Her dying is just a mechanism for her to experience that story, that real story that she had with Eric and herself.
They didn't both clearly die at the end there? They weren't both very, very dead?
I think that's what she wishes would have happened. That's the thing. She goes over and over again, hoping or wishing that had happened.
But that's what they show us.
Yeah. Just as weird as it is, because that's the thing that we have to reckon with. Was there a bunch of those people that Eric had killed in the basement, stringing them up against the roots, right? Or was it what we saw? Is it the overwhelming guilt? Or is she living with this overwhelming guilt over what Eric did, and maybe even her, to Maria? And that's her torture, her 35-year-old torture, let's say, or 40 or 45, whatever it is, however old she is. And actually, the actor herself doesn't look that old, by the way, and which was shocking when I saw her. I forget her name. I have to look her up again. But do you have any thoughts around the way that she died? I don't think he stabbed her in the brain. I think he just buried her because he thought that was enough to not make her reanimate, just to bring clarity to the audience and the confusion over what happened when she rose from the grave. Which was also, there's like that Beta moment when we see Beta come out of the ground, but he was real.
She never existed, so.
Okay. Also, feel free to elaborate.
It's all part of the psychosis.
By the way, always feel free to jut in to kind of reinforce your theory. Yeah. If so, then whose perspective is this from? Is this just Idalia, or is she completely... Is Idalia alone? Eric's not there. That could be too. Doña Alma never existed. Eric never existed. She survived when he didn't. That could be too. Eric is the figment. Or one of many figments. Pieces of the Hail Mary full of grace are in this episode, obviously in Spanish. But the first one that she mentions is Dios te salve María Elena, eres de gracia, el Señor es contigo. Idalia literally does the Hail Mary, but instead of Hail Mary, it's Hail María Elena, the person that she may have killed, or she may have Otised. She broke her leg and she's like, fuck this, I'm out. And that's the first tumble in her bricks of guilt that kind of compound when Eric kills all of those other people that they were with. So I like that little touch to the Ave Maria, Maria Elena. But to further on that point, and this is another thing that I kind of want to cover for the sake of covering it. How does Idalia know about this place? Because Eric is looking at her and goes, how do you know about this place? You've never shared that with me before. It's kind of something I want to touch on, which also reinforces my 35 years in the future theory. But
she says that Maria told her about it. That's the information we were given.
Now, the question is, before she died or after she died?
Well, I'm literal, so I'm going to have to say before she died.
Well, since it doesn't exist...
Okay. No, I'm hoping for that. Okay.
Since it doesn't exist, it is literally just a case of after, like, the trauma of what they're going through with, like, killing these people, we're going here. That's just it. Like, it doesn't exist. Like, it's just, like, we have to go here and then it's like entering like this alternative kind of reality or state of consciousness.
So do you think they're in a physical place, though? Or are they just sort of wandering the woods and this is all in their head type of thing?
I don't think that they're, like, conscious. I feel like it's just, like, some kind of weird kind of psychological state in between being alive and dead. Like, they're not dead, but they're not conscious. And
so instead of Eric killing all these people, maybe one of them took them out and they're, like, in the middle of... They're, like, on the way of dying...
I haven't fully thought this theory through, as you guys can tell. I am fully making it up as I go along. However,
I love it.
I do. I'm enjoying this.
I don't think they were. I don't think like they've been like physically knocked out or anything. I think it's just the trauma of what they've been through is causing this kind of shared state of
psychosis, maybe.
Where do you think they are physically, though? Where in the real world physically, where do you think they are? Are they passed out somewhere imagining all this? Are they in a physical building somewhere? Where do you think they are in reality while they're experiencing this?
Dave, you're going to have to help me out here.
Okay. No. So what you're saying is they're both sonambulos, let's say. Let's just say. They're both sleepwalkers.
Well, they would be walkers. That's what they call the walkers. So they would be dead.
But like on the literal sense, because I know you like literal. They're like sleepwalking.
I do. Okay.
Yes,
okay.
That was my original point from before, because she calls the walkers, she says it in Spanish, but she calls the walkers sleepwalkers.
So it could be...
They're alive, but sleepwalking.
Right, to give you like
a
sense of what this could be, right? Like to kind of give you more fuel to your theory. When you're asleep, what happens? And you dream. Your dreams feel like they last longer. Or sorry, the dreams are relatively short, but this is during the span of hours.
They feel really long, yeah.
Right. They are literally dying, but the dream is very short. They're actually in the clearing where they killed all those people.
Yes.
Because the roots are all around them, the trees. Why is a tree... That's a little too many roots to be in a basement of a place whose electricity is still working, the hot water is still working, the heat's... Well, the fireplace, but it's still working. All of these things are working. Hot water... So this kind of answers your question, like this place doesn't seem real, or that it would function in a zombie apocalypse. Let's say, oh, the propane tank, whatever. No. So maybe it is just that they're experiencing this within this span of minutes in real life. Do you know what I mean? And that's where they end up dying. And I think they end up killing each other.
In the real world.
Because you made me kill those people. Meanwhile, you really killed Maria, let's say. And it does kind of explain... in a really figurative sense, why Eric himself is coming to grips with what possibly Maria did. He's feeling bad for not letting Maria in. He's realizing that she did something to Maria. Idalia did something to Maria. He's feeling terrible and remorseful, not for killing all those people, because he felt like he was doing that for the right reasons, for Idalia. But they're all doing this fight. He is not fully caught up to what Idalia is already sensing, I think. And now he's finally coming to grips with dying, let's say. And what he did, why he did it. This whole dream state is them trying to understand what just happened in a span of minutes, seconds, let's say even. Right? I think that's kind of cool, Jasmine.
Damn, Jazzy.
I wish I'd fully thought of it. I had the beginnings, but I was just like...
Dave jumped into your brain and finished it up for you.
Yeah,
but
thank you, Dave.
Damn, fuck you guys so bad.
Okay, I'll admit I have goosebumps.
Wait. I have another question. I have another question. Is RJ real?
Thanks, yes. Ashley Weidman. Thanks a lot, Ashley Weidman. Man, that's one of those things. But you're saying that's that level of like, oh, you got me, I think, right?
Yeah. Like I'm really like all of that explanation really makes a lot of sense.
I kind of had that in the back of my mind.
Break it down that way.
But I preferred the whole, from her point of view, she's still alive perspective. I'm liking yours better now.
Dave, I like your future projection thing. That was a very cool concept, but Jazzy's, I feel like, is far more plausible. Like I can wrap my head around none of this even existing a lot more than I can the time travel.
Why I like the 35 years in the future theory mostly is because it really does a good job of dovetailing with just the last episode. Because I feel like this episode, and this is probably why they chose this as the last episode, is it takes from every single episode that we've had thus far. It takes the folie à deux. It reverses the erstwhile would never get together survivors would get together. These are two people who you think would be good together, but it drives them apart, right? It's like, it's a reverse. The Devon episode where you kind of get an idea of what's happening, but at the end, it's like, no, you don't know what's going on. Devon, you're like, in the beginning, you're like, I don't know what's going on, but then it apexes to understanding at the end. So is it any wonder why I said, oh, what's the link between this one and the last one? Oh, it's really her in the future reliving this moment over and over again. I'm confirming biases just like Dr. Everett. I'm in Tales of the Walking Dead. Guys, I need to get out of this episode. Guys, we're still watching the episode. Wake up. Okay, I went a little meta.
I mean, I like it. I like that theory, but
that's fine.
Man,
that's fine.
I just want everything to be
literal,
clean cut. Just make sense. Just make fucking sense.
I think Tales of the Walking Dead has decided that it doesn't want to go down the route of clear cut. It wants to go down the route of let's make people think.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna keep watching it, even though it's not my favorite concept. But I'm in it for the long haul.
I think you like this sort of thing, by the way. I think the fact that it makes you have to think, I think you don't like. But I think you do like anthology episodes because you watch all those crime dramas, like NCIS. I don't forget which ones you watch, like NCIS or
a lot of that's
Cold
like
Case
the one I don't. No, I watch Criminal Minds and Bones and Law and Order SVU and CSI Las Vegas. And
those
all
are
of
anthology
those.
episodes. I know that the people are the same,
sort of,
and there are arcs.
Yeah.
And
right.
But they're not really great ones necessarily. Like, that guy has an alcohol problem or drug problem. All right, whatever. Anyway,
right. The main characters, their stories are arcing through the entire series.
Continuity.
Yeah, like it's like why people like Star Trek. It's an anthology series, technically. Star Trek Next Generation. The people are the same.
Technically,
the situations are different. This is one where the people are different, the situations are different, and the only constant is the universe.
Yes. Yeah.
And even then, loosely at that, but I like that because in it being loosely related to the universe, it adds to the universe. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, these are the stories we can't normally tell on The Walking Dead because it's like, that's the extra scene, or here's an episode idea we couldn't just do on The Walking Dead or Fear the Walking Dead. It's like, we would have loved to do this, but no.
Well, we're seeing
footage.
We're seeing little tidbits of what's going on in other places of the world. While we're in Alexandria rebuilding civilization, here's what's going on over here, and here's what other people are having to deal with in this part. And I like the concept. I just want more. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know how to describe what I'm feeling.
I'm going to say, I think you don't want more.
I do. I need more Evie and Joe for sure.
Oh, okay. More
for
of this.
Sure.
Okay. I was gonna say more Walking Dead connections. I think that's my main gripe too. Is that like there's a part of me that's like, ooh, I wish I could see more of that. I want to see how this develops.
Yeah. I want to see more of these characters. I want to see more of them. Some of them.
To your point, and like zombies aside, because I heard that comment. I don't care.
Zombies. What are zombies?
Sorry. Sonambulos aside. I'm ambivalent, and I'll tell you why, because it's the same reason why you're like, I wish I could see these characters move on. I'm ambivalent because part of the draw isn't the Sonambulos or the Sleepwalkers or the Walkers or the whatever. That's a tiny piece of it. Why do we watch The Walking Dead?
Characters.
For the family.
Exactly. So that's why this is very hard for us.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But let's go deeper. It's the drama. It's not the horror as it's a piece. It's not the zombies.
A little bit the horror.
It's a piece. A little bit, right. But what keeps us watching? Investment in
the
a
character
narrative
development.
Or a character. A lot of people attach themselves to characters. Those are the diehard fans. These are the people that keep and continue watching because they want to see how their story progresses. Me, it's always been the story. I'm a slave to story. And that's just me. And maybe some other people who are my brothers and sisters. Because I don't care who dies. I'm like, does it serve the story? Okay,
Nobody's
good.
safe.
Let's keep going. Sorry, Glenn.
You shut your dirty whore mouth.
Sorry. I said sorry.
Keep his name out of your mouth.
I said sorry. But like that's on the hierarchy of values when it comes to watching the show. It's the drama. It's how these stories are constructed. What purpose does it serve? Who affects whom? What keeps the story going? Because that's what we're used to with the Walking Dead universe. It's not the characters as much, not the links, it's not the Easter eggs as much. It always comes down to characters, but mostly the drama itself. So when you're forced to have to cut it short, that's hard. That's hard because we're acclimatized to it, right, Jasmine? Acclimatized? Yep. Largely an Anglo word, acclimatized? We don't say that here. We say we're used to it. Get used to it. Look, guys, I love that this episode gives us the opportunity to discuss those feelings. Alone, it gave us the opportunity to discuss those feelings. And I think it's valuable. I think it's totally valuable. Here is the hat trick, the punchline to this episode. Idalia, the name Idalia, means some things. So just like Alma means soul, Mrs. Soul, Idalia in Germanic means work or labor. Who cares? Work or labor doesn't seem to fit. But the more common root of Idalia is in Greek, which is behold the sun.
S-U-N?
Yeah.
Or S-O-N?
S-U-N. Not Jesus, but behold the sun. That's what it means.
Okay.
I'm going to put it to you. If you had to connect that theme to this person in the context of what you just saw, what do you think that would mean? What is sunlight if not the truth? Sunlight is a disinfectant, let's say, for lies. Like it's an expression. Sunlight, giving something sunlight means exposing the truth.
The light.
Right.
Bringing something to light. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. So what is she if not coming to grips with the truth, with what happened?
With what she did.
What she and he did, if that's where you're going
Her
with.
actions. Her actions were basically the first domino that tipped in all of this, proceeding up to where they are now, and her having a mental breakdown, apparently. If it happened at all.
Right. If you go the literal route, it works. She is the first one to be sensitive to come into grips with what happened. And she's trying to follow Eric. Literal. If we go with Jasmine, she comes to the realization first that this is what's happening. We're dying. She doesn't know it immediately, but she knows something's happened and we are coming to grips with what just happened. And this is what goes on in her figurative mind. Like as she's dying, they're realizing what just happened. And it ends up that after they killed all those people, they killed themselves. And it was so fast that she didn't have time to process it and they die.
Killed each other?
Yeah,
or themselves?
After they killed all those people, they argued or something, and then they killed each other. And Idalia kills Eric for killing all those people, let's say. Maybe even. It could be a bunch of things. So we don't know. This is where I can't go, like in terms of, but like if I had to take a guess as to how they killed themselves in the clearing after killing all those people, I think Idalia is horrified by what he did for her. She's like, you shouldn't have done that. You know, why did you kill all those people? And then they kill each other immediately. And what happens after that is them on the way to death, figuring out what just happened. Why was this so fast and so swift? Why did I feel that way? And Eric's like slow to the take. He's like, what? I did this for you. We did this so we'd have a place to stay. I did this for you to be safe. And now you're finally safe. Well, we got our wish. Now you're safe. What's the problem? Oh, we're already dead. Figurative. Okay. If it's 35 years in the future, behold the sun, the sunlight, the truth is Idalia's alma, her soul, constantly being aware of what happened 35 years ago. This is the price. Let's go back to the premise I love going back to the most. This is the price of survival without looking to the next step of what it means to thrive. Oh yeah, you're safe. You're behind stone. Nobody can hear you. You have a gate. Everything's fine. Nobody knows where you are. Nobody can get to where you are, probably. Nobody knows this place exists. But you're alone. You're alone with your thoughts. You're alone with the truth. And that truth eats away at you every year. You're in the prison of your own making. You're in purgatory. So she is constantly aware of beholding her own truth. I mean, if we're going that route. When I saw the meaning of her name, I'm like, oh, this clinches it for me. This is my theory. This is what I'm going with. So Sharon says, no, she's an onion. She has layers. Like Al.
Vidalia.
Like an onion. Vidalia.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
And if you like what you heard, head on over to ratethispodcast.com/squawking dead. 5 stars and an eggplant is all we need to know that you love us. But tell us what you liked. Oh, I really hope you like this. Tell us what you didn't like. It should have been more literal.
Yes, please. Agree with me. Agree with me.
Yeah, agree with Rachel
Come agree with
your
me.
rating. But make sure to leave 5 stars before you do. And tell us what you didn't like. Tell us what we missed, what we think we should have talked about, but we didn't quite But tell us, remember to tell us after every episode. And if you like what we're doing and you don't want us to miss the things that you thought we missed, and you want to have those thoughts in these episodes, create a free account at ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com, and just follow us at ko-fi.com/squawkingdead, because that's where we post our scheduled recordings for you to be able to join us in the real-time chat. And if you feel like it and you can't quite make it to all these chats, well, you can buy us a coffee for 30 days of supportive back content, where you can download the unedited episode recordings, or you can join a membership tier for as little as $1 and get a ton of perks just at the base level, the Walkers tier, for as little as $1 a month, including Discord access. So you can have these chats with us beforehand, and we can refine our thoughts before every recording, or have the know and inside track on what the heck we're doing at That's My Viewing Party, the viewing party, End All Viewing Parties, the Walking Dead series finale party, or our thoughts and ideas and what we're planning on doing at the camp, and how you can tell us how to better do this podcast, because it's our podcast. So without further ado, I've been your host, David Cameo, and I was joined by CosmoMom09, Rachel Burt, Bridget, ko-fi.com/Punky Brewster. That's PONKYBRUISETR. She had to leave early. And of course, Survivors tier member, Jasmine. Jasmine.iac on Instagram. And Sharon D and Aiden in the chat. Sharon D, Blazy Gardner on the socials. ko-fi.com/BlazyGardner0150. Also, and Aiden, ko-fi.com/Aiden Atkin. By the way, if you want to follow Aiden's journey into blogging and other awesome things that's on his mind, and he's just a cool person.
Because he's just fucking awesome.
And if you enjoyed this episode, always leave a like, comment, share, subscribe to all notifications everywhere on socials, on our YouTube, and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform that you'll be rating us on, right? Take care, everybody. We hope you enjoyed our coverage of Tales of the Walking Dead. It's a season finale, not series, because I think we're getting a season 2 soon. Announcement. Probably after this episode actually airs. Take care. We'll see you in the next one, which is probably going to be the final 8 episodes. Third trimester
final
premiere of The Walking Dead's final 8 episodes.
Just
Take
be
care.
like the next. They're coming. They're just coming up. It's just more episodes. It's not the end. I can't.
Rachel, behold the sun. Behold the sun. It's happening. As much as it pains me to say it, and it does pain me to say it, I feel it every time it comes out of my mouth, but it's something we have to say. Behold the sun, folks.
No, we don't. We don't have to say it.
And while you're there, in the sun, enjoy the sunlight. So, with that, everybody, take care. We'll see you very soon, and we'll be with you every step of the way. We love you. Take care.
I'm going to go cry now.
Bye, folks.